Some pastor up in Washington has like a
I
cold.
pay attention.
No, he has a cold, and they've diagnosed it as this particular cold.
Well, we're not sure what
That
you're
was
doing.
scary.
If you are self-isolating or maybe you don't have access to your books or who knows.
We're
But
here
we're
for you.
together to make sure we can get through this text together to give you some help on preaching. And
Raise you up.
yeah, right. Yes. So it is John
Oh.
11, verses 1 through 45. Long text, the resurrection of Lazarus. So we will get after it.
Leave away, spit on my Lord in every way. Yet I'm still welcome in the arms
Evidently not.
I think
Are you ready?
We're fine.
You're gonna have to take us. Are you ready?
All right, let's do it. John chapter 11, verses 1 through 45. Big text. It starts out with introducing all the characters at play and the circumstances in which they are there. Lazarus, who's not there, he's in
He's there.
Bethany,
Yeah.
right?
Oh.
And who we learn is the brother of Mary and Martha. And he is not doing very well.
He seems to be under the weather.
He is under the weather.
Yeah. And this is the Mary who anointed Jesus that you haven't read about yet because it's not until chapter 12.
Right. So you get a little foreshadowing, setting the context.
For Tim, who's not here, who is always our chronology snob.
Right.
See, even John doesn't go chronologically.
Not all. He's not chronological. Well, he's giving us a heads up. He's like, you're going to hear about this later.
That's
it's
true.
called foreshadowing. That's
All right.
So they're all there. Or not they're all there. Jesus is with his disciples. Those folks are not with them, and he gets word about Lazarus being ill. And what's he do?
He stays away for a bit.
Yeah.
He sits. For 2 more days? I
Almost
believe?
intentionally.
Yeah.
It
verse
seems
4.
that way, right?
Yeah, that's what you get.
The dogs are
And he's like, he's sick and sort of like he's gonna die, but we're gonna wait till he.
Well, and he becomes a doctor all of a sudden. He whatever illness this is, it will not lead to death. If he were here today, he might say the same thing. But anyway, that's
Hint.
Yeah. So it is beautiful that way. Is he's front loading. He's telling you where this is going.
Yeah.
Before it gets there, right? That this is not going to lead to death, but this is for the glory of God and for the glory of the Son of God, right? So this is going to elevate him and his role and what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, that glory of God, it always goes back to John 1, how the glory was manifest through the word full of grace and truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Glory is a good nugget to
Sure.
kind of think about of what is the glory of God and what is Jesus trying to show here as the glory of God or being glorified through it. So I think that's a thought for people to have. He's preparing them, showing them like what it means to die, but also what it means to be prepared when we die, and that it is prepared for when we die. So
Yeah.
it's just an interesting thing.
So his disciples seem, everyone seems a bit confused by what's going on. He says it seems like he intentionally waits.
Yep.
Then they get news that he's dead. Jesus lets them know that Lazarus, and even here the words he uses confuses them, right? He has fallen asleep.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like, well, if he's asleep, then he's going to get better, right? And they don't know that he's talking about his death. But they don't want him to go because of what?
Well,
Verse 8.
the Yehudi aren't happy with him. The
Yehudi.
Judean residents have seemed to have turned on Jesus by this point in the story.
Okay. Yeah.
And so you wonder if him waiting, right, if in the disciples' minds they're thinking on Jesus' sake, well, he's trying to weigh the odds, whether he can get back down there to Bethany, right, or whether he needs to stay up here. And so then after 2 days, after longer, then he says, I think we should just go.
Yeah.
And that's a subjunctive there. So it's a suggestion to his disciples, will you follow me, right? I think it would be better for us to go.
To go, right. And they don't want him because there's opposition. They don't want him to go. You get this great Thomas shows up here, which, as everyone knows, he's going to make a huge appearance. We always get that text the Sunday after Easter, but in the upper room there, where he's very prominent again, the famous doubting Thomas or unbelieving Thomas text. But here he is all in, right? If Jesus is going and it's dangerous, Thomas says, "Let's go," right? And die with him.
Yeah.
Now, it is interesting. It could be die with Lazarus, but that doesn't seem to really make sense. It's probably die with Jesus, assuming that Jesus is going in this great
And
opera.
the only reason you can do that is because in verse 13 it said Jesus had spoken of his death, and it's not clear whether he's spoken of his death
Right.
or whether he's speaking of Lazarus's
Right.
death.
Yeah.
So
So they head on their way to Bethany, and they arrive there. And again, you get this sort of strange thing where Jesus doesn't go straight to the house. He doesn't go straight to the tomb where Lazarus is buried. Oh, we do get a time stamp now that by the time Jesus gets there, how long has Lazarus been dead?
This is important, especially if you look up like the Talmud on death and all of these kinds of things. The first 3 days, for all of you Princess Bride fans, you're only mostly dead.
Andre!
good.
But on the
That's
fourth
good.
day, you become fully dead.
Fully dead.
The body actually begins to decay at that point.
Okay.
This is how you can get in the text that it says Jesus' body will not see decay. That's because he was only in the grave 3 days.
Gotcha.
So anyway, so that's
This is not mostly dead.
This is dead.
This is
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
good. That's pretty
So,
good. Yeah.
anyway.
If you haven't seen that, you're under quarantine.
That's right.
Hey, you should go
Look
watch
it up.
It's worth it. It's worth a good watch. Yeah. So yeah. So he's 4 days. He's been in the tomb for 4 days, and he arrives there. Martha heads out to meet him, and what is their kind of conversation like? Because it starts there, then moves to Mary. What's kind of going on?
Oh, just simply that Jesus is there too late. Why didn't he come earlier? And I think Jesus gives those words in verse 23. Your brother will rise again.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I think it's, I know going back to verse 9, I don't want to go back too far, but just that whole idea of walking and knowing that as we walk with the light of the world versus walking in darkness, how do we see kind of that that separation here? And Jesus is speaking kind of like we talked about the woman at the well or Nicodemus about last week with the blind man who really actually saw while everyone else was blind, even though he was the blind one who actually regained sight. Most importantly in the faith, we see right here again that I don't know what I'm talking about right now, but but we see again.
At least you acknowledge it, Ernie.
But we see again Jesus bringing to the table that this is above our own, because she thought that he will rise again, but in a sense of on the last day. But in terms of like Jesus is here, he's going to, as we know the story.
Yeah.
Do you ever think Ernie does that in the middle of his sermons? Like, he just like,
No, that's why I write a manuscript to guard from myself of those very moments, because trust me, they're going on.
If he does, hopefully he doesn't say that out loud.
That's right.
In the middle of the sermon going, I don't know what I'm saying right now.
Hold on.
I do talk out loud when I'm at the grocery store about my upcoming sermon. It's really awkward.
Yeah. So he.
I mean, I've even had those thoughts in my head. I don't know what I'm talking about right now. Hope this is right.
Yeah. So it becomes this great assertion of the resurrection of the dead, right? And that this then becomes the great hope. Again, man, this text with what's going on
Yeah.
around the world right now,
Yeah.
man, what a gem to be able to preach.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if we don't believe in the resurrection of the dead, then kind of what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like this is
We're panicking.
we're-
That's what
we're-
we'd
yeah,
be doing.
Like we are the ones that stand tall in the face of death and
we-
proclaim an assurance.
Even as Jesus is going to raise Lazarus back from the dead, even the way that he talks about it, right? He who lives and believes in me will never die into the ages, or will not die into the ages. That you get this understanding, especially from John's gospel, that life is more than what is going on in this world. It's more than just breathing and having a heartbeat.
Okay.
That being connected to Christ means that life which God initially breathed into man at the very beginning, right? And so even though he's going to raise Lazarus, this statement from him is not about per se the resurrection from the tomb for Lazarus. It's about Christ actually coming and bringing life back into the
Yes.
world that is dead.
Yes. Yes.
So Paul in Romans, right? You're dead in your trespasses.
Yeah. Right, and so then the text moves from Martha to Mary, and it was that weird. I know we were translating it. It kind of surprised us all that she goes and sort of secretly tells Mary that Jesus is there, that the teacher, as she says, the teacher is here and has called you. But she does it kind of privately or secretly.
Yeah.
Now, it does set this kind of image where there's all these folks on the outside, these other people that are there with Mary, and Mary slips out.
Yeah.
They follow her.
Yeah.
Right? So again, it's kind of setting the scene, I guess, that way.
Yeah. There's also this interesting, I didn't notice it when we were translating it, but in verse 29, she heard and rose quickly and went to him, right? You get the statement from Jesus, your brother will rise again, and it's going to be the exact same thing. He's going to call him out of the tomb,
good.
and
Yeah.
immediately Lazarus is going to rise and come to him.
In other words, his response is no different than his sister's response.
Exactly.
The only problem is he happened to be dead.
He happened to be dead at the time. And it's going to be no different than Peter's response when he hears that Jesus has risen from the dead. He's also going to arise quickly
Man,
and go.
that's good. Those are some good connections.
so there's some interesting stuff
Yeah,
there.
I like that. Yeah, that the obedience of the word, to the word, to
Yeah.
the call of God.
Yeah.
You're gonna do what He says.
Yeah.
Right.
And you will,
If you
and
happen
in
to
that
be
case,
dead,
if you
that's
live and
no
believe
big
in
deal.
him, you will never die,
That's
right?
right,
So
yeah.
there's the
This
So.
illness will not result in death.
in death. That's right.
And so she goes out. These mourners, kind of those people that are there weeping with her, they go out. They think she's going to the tomb. She goes to meet Jesus, and she does so. And here you get, I think a lot of sermons might actually focus on this whole little section here, because you see this kind of like heart-wrenching sort of grieving of our Lord. Right?
Yeah.
You get the famous shortest verse in the Bible, right?
Yep.
Jesus wept, but that they see, that other people see how much he loved him, right? And,
Yeah.
And this, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing to do, to kind of emphasize this.
Yeah.
I think,
I did hear one commentary on this though, and that is that Jesus, we are not seeing Jesus' humanity here.
yeah.
We are seeing Jesus' recognition of their unfaithfulness. So this is like Matthew when he weeps over Jerusalem, "Oh Jerusalem, Jerusalem,
Yeah,
how often I would have
long-
gathered
yeah,
you,"
yeah.
right? That he's there
Yeah.
and he's weeping because of their unbelief, because of their
Yeah, I've heard that
unwillingness
too.
to follow
I think
him.
at the seminary, Dr. Schuckard would talk this way, like he's told them this, he's going to
Yeah.
rise. He said, like, he's got, and he's
Yeah.
just told Martha, like, this is okay.
Yeah.
And the persistent unbelief, and this is, but
Yeah.
I think you could do. That's not crystal clear. though.
Right. No,
And
preaching wise, you could
And
do
then-
it either
and
way.
then I think you could really do this. Like, here's a man who has come to overturn, like what you were talking about earlier, this very thing.
Yeah.
And he sees and he experiences and lives with these people in the grief of the separation that the grave brings.
Yeah.
And it's not lost on him.
Yeah, this is Paul in 1 Corinthians. I think it's 1 Corinthians. It might be 2 Corinthians. If one rejoices, all rejoice. If one is sorrowful, we all, cry together. Yeah, you could definitely run that way with it.
Yeah.
What was that?
Ernie's playing
Behind
around
my
over
back?
there.
No,
Yeah.
Enter into the conversation, Ernie.
The Jesus, the Jesus, he always, right here we see his compassion, and I think it's just simply, I think ultimately his compassion for the whole world is he was obedient unto his death, and, that constant compassion, and I think that's, 37 is always that hospital moment, right, for everyone here as pastors. I know you always get someone stopping you
Sure.
when you're visiting someone that you don't know. I mean, you're visiting someone you know, but
There's somebody else. Yeah.
they're like, oh, you look like you're part of the church or something, and I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well,
Yeah.
if God is so good, why didn't He let so and so going through this or die? And I think verse 36 really shows, or 37, sorry, as the Jews were kind of showing their disbelief or scoffing at, could not He who opened the eyes of the blind man also have kept this man from
Well,
dying?
that's their point at this, because up until this point, they've known people who have healed the blind. But the stopping point is once you're dead, you're dead.
Yeah.
And yet here is one who comes on the scene who seems to even be willing to take on death.
Yeah.
The glory of God. Let's wait.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he does then, right? So moves forward fairly quick succession from there to command the tomb to be open. You get the resistance.
But Lord, he's dead.
He's dead, not mostly dead, which means he's starting to decay.
He's
which
starting
means
to
it's
stink.
gonna smell. And Jesus is unmoved, open or remove the stone, right? And he prays to his Father and gives thanks to him that his Father hears him, and then he prays that his glory will be displayed before all these that are gathered there, right? That they might see or they might know, and then he just calls Lazarus, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Hey, buddy.
yeah.
Calls him by name. That's
Yeah.
I think I've
That's
heard lots
big.
of sermons
Yeah,
on
you
that.
could do that.
Right? I've
He
called
knows
you by
you-
name.
right.
You are mine.
Isaiah
Yeah.
43.
That's
So, yep.
So
And,
even death can't separate you,
yeah,
right, from the
yeah.
love of God, and calls him by name, and he comes walking out.
Yep.
He's got the bandages still all wrapped around him. He's all tied up. He's all pulled into it.
That's their
And
website.
and so he says unbind him, which that's some good language. That
Yeah.
being bound
Loose
up,
him.
Set free.
Yeah,
Getting
Luso.
set free.
Or Luo, sorry.
and then the final result is verse 45. What happens?
And many believed.
Some believe, and yeah. So,
But some would be angry.
and then if you go on down through there, then you get more of it. But
Yeah.
this is the text. Then this will lead you to, if you're going to preach this into Palm Sunday, this leads you to the text where Lazarus is with Jesus.
Yeah. Which is
going
why
into
the
that.
crowds here. Hey,
Yeah.
this is the guy we know about Lazarus, right?
Yeah.
So there is. I want to throw something in there. If anyone's looking for something a little different, there's a poem by C.S. Lewis. I can't remember the title. You'll find it. I think it's something like from Philip to Lazarus, and so it's where Stephen. It's from Stephen to Lazarus,
Stephen to
and
Lazarus.
so it's Stephen, the first martyr of the church, right?
Yeah.
And he writes this letter after his death, basically, to Lazarus, saying, your ship was safe at harbor, like you had completed the journey, and yet your Lord needed you one more time, so you had to do this all over again. And that was his thing. It was like basically how courageous that he called you by name, and you put you set back sail again to go out for his glory, only to have to do this all over again. Like you're gonna have to die again. You're gonna go through all this again. It's kind of a beautiful, it's a short little poem. It might be useful.
And if you want to go that way, this is sanctification at its peak, right? That once you are within that realm of God, once He has fully taken you on as His own, you do his bidding,
Yeah.
right? And so if he calls you out of the tomb,
Calls you out,
you
yeah.
willingly go
Yeah.
because that's who you are in Christ.
Yeah, I think another nugget that I think we always know about, but I think people need to hear is just that we are Lazarus too, in a sense where original sin, born into death, born into sin. We don't make a decision. We don't give our life to the Lord. We don't commit or dedicate. All that vernacular goes out the window when we go to John 11. It's pretty much we're dead on arrival, and the only way we're made alive is by the Word and the sacraments, the Word, power, promise,
Yeah.
God, Jesus. Giving, and that's a constant, I think. But people in this day and age with Christianity, it's always that 1% that they want to play.
Yeah.
Like, I need to do something. And as you said about sanctification, no, Jesus has already done it, and there's
Right.
nothing else to prove.
Right.
But I think it's easy to forget that we are like Lazarus, needing to be made alive outside of ourselves, which I think it's sometimes.
Yeah, this isn't Lazarus walking out of the tomb because he wants to show Jesus how faithful he is, right? This is Jesus actually
making him alive.
Again, if you wanted to stick with John, right? It's 1 John who has called you out of darkness into his marvelous light,
Yes.
right? You can pull some of that same language out of there.
All right,
so.
that's good. That's a lot. It was a long text, but check out craftofpreaching.com. Look at the resources there, and God bless your preaching.
Be safe. We love you.